Okay, let's look at how to code a pre-test and post-test loop. In your Google Drive folder, I have dropped some files in there. Let's go ahead and open pretestdemo.html and posttestdemo.html in code. We'll start out with pretest. Remember, a pretest loop checks the condition before the loop body iterates. We're going to try this by practicing with a loop that will just print the numbers 1 through 5. And since our primary focus here is to just work with loops, we're just going to use document.write. We won't have any event listeners. We're actually not even going to code a function for this. Okay, so let's start out by adding a script section right before our body closes. I'm going to create a counter variable and initialize that counter variable with the value of 1. Notice I called my counter variable I. The pretest loop that we've looked at so far is the while loop. We use the keyword while and a test condition. Could we write a test condition that uses our counter variable and will allow this loop to iterate 5 times? Because we want to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's okay if you don't know right now. But I is currently 1. So let's try. It may not work. Let's try I is less than 5. Okay, let's try that. Okay, our code body needs to be in a set of curly brackets. We need to do something, and the something that we're going to do is document.write. And let's write the value of I, which is a variable, so we don't have to put it in quotation marks. And I'm just going to concatenate that with a space so that we have a little separation on our screen. Okay, so the code's body needs to do something, and then it needs to change something about the test condition. In this case, I'm going to increment the test condition. So I'll do I, our short way, plus plus. So each time this loop iterates, it will add 1 to the counter variable. Okay? So let's see what happens, and if what happens is what we predicted would happen. I'll refresh my browser here, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I wanted it to print numbers 1 through 5. What's wrong with this test condition? Right, I could put an equal sign there because I want it to print the value of 5 as well. So if I refresh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, just very quickly, for the purposes of this tutorial, let's look at what happens if I had written my test condition incorrectly. So let's say I just kind of got my operator switched around. It's a common misconception, and I wrote greater than. If I wrote greater than, would this loop ever iterate? If I refresh, no. I is never greater than 1 because there's no way I can change the value of I. But look at this instance. What if I was initially a value greater than 5? And each time my loop iterated, it continued to add 1 to the counter variable. If I refresh this, you see this? That means I'm caught in an infinite loop. It is going to continue to loop until my browser crashes. Okay? So I need to do a good stop there, probably even close this file down to get rid of that. Okay? My browser got caught in a loop. So we want to avoid that. I'm going to change this back to the way that we had it. And you save this file. This will be a good referral to you when you're working on your test, so you can open this pretest demo, which is a while loop, and look back at what this code structure looks like. Okay, now let's try a post-test loop that accomplishes the same thing. Again, our focus here is the loop, so we're not going to have a function or an event listener. We said a post-test loop checks the condition after the body iterates. The post-test loop always iterates at least one time, and in this case, we want to have the same results printed to the screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A post-test loop's keyword syntax begins with do, and then we have a set of curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets, we do whatever we want our loop to do. So in this case, I want a document.write. Oh, we forgot something. I forgot to do my counter variable. Var I equals 1. Okay, so I want to document.write the value of I concatenated with just a blank space. I need to change something about my test condition, so I'll just do an increment. And after the parentheses, we have the keyword while, after the curly brackets, we have the keyword while in a set of parentheses. Inside that parentheses, we have our test condition. So we could do I while I, which currently has a value of 1, is less than, and we learned from the last time, we need to have a 5, or less than or equal to 5. Okay, so let's refresh this and see if we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we do. Okay, so this code, we started out with 1. It prints 1 and a space, and then it adds 1 to I. So now I has a value of 2. It checks the condition. 2 is less than or equal to 5, so it loops again. It writes 2 space, changes I to 3. 3 is less than or equal to 5, so it loops again. It writes 3 space. Now 3 has a value of 4. 4 is less than or equal to 5, loops, writes 4, writes a space. Now 4 has a value of 5. I has a value of 5. 5 is less than or equal to 5. So it loops again, it writes 5, adds 1 to 5, so now I is 6. 6 is not less than or equal to 5, so the loop stops. It never printed 6, but at the end of this loop, I did have a value of 6. We could compare that to our pre-test demo. In this case, if we follow the logic of this, I starting out with 1, it wrote 1 space, now I is 2. 2 is less than or equal to 5, so it wrote 2 space. Now I has a value of 3. It looped. 3 is greater than 5. It wrote 3 space. Now I is 4. 4 is less than or equal to 5. 4 space. And then it added 1. So now I is 5. 5 is less than or equal to 5. It wrote 5 space. I is now 6. 6 is not less than or equal to 5, so the loop stops. Now flipping back to this post-test demo, don't change anything about your code. I just want to demonstrate this. What I mean by a post-test loop iterating at least once, this code is going to happen. It's going to execute this code no matter what this test condition is. Okay? So I'm going to change this variable to 8. Okay? We know 8 is not less than or equal to 5. In the pre-test loop, if we had a similar situation, again, don't change anything about your code, this code would never iterate because it only completes this code while this condition is true. But because it checks the condition at the end in the post-test loop, it will do this at least once. So if we print this, we get the value of 8. Okay? That's just the big difference between a pre-test and a post-test. Post-test is always going to do this code at least one time. Pre-test is only going to iterate based on the condition. Okay?